Jesus. This week we're going to talk about patience in prayer. Patience in prayer. We said that God, as our Father, is responsible for our lives. It's His responsibility to take care of us, to provide the things that we need, to take food and clothing and shelter and all that. But the challenge with this relationship, that while God is the one taking care of us, we are involved in a spiritual attack. We know that there is the devil, Satan, originally one of God's angels, turned away from God, and his whole purpose in life is to destroy God. Well, he doesn't have access to God, but he does have access to us. So he then uses situations and manipulates them to distract us from God and to hopefully sever the relationship between us and God. And as long as he can keep us away from God or not to have a deep enough relationship with God, he's happy. Satan is quite happy for you to just come to church on Sabbath. He's quite happy for you even to study your lesson, as long as you don't implement what you learn. Or as long as you start putting limits on what God can do in your life. He's thrilled with that. Because he knows that the heart that is completely open to God is the one that he cannot overcome. But the moment we start to say, God, you can do this, but you can't do this, Satan's like, oh, that's awesome. I'll just attack the area that you won't let God have access to. So we know that we're in a spiritual fight, a spiritual battle. Ephesians 6 says this in verse 12. For we know we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. So really, the neighbor who never cleans up their dog's poop, right? You have a neighbor like that? Don't look around if you're that neighbor, right? But the issue really primarily isn't that. Right? Satan will use that to allow you to become irritated and start talking about your neighbors. Say, I can't stand those kind of people. And start labeling them. Because Jesus wants to use that opportunity for you to maybe serve them. Maybe you clean up your neighbor's dog's poop. There's a funny idea. Why? Because Jesus came to serve. And through service, we can build relationships. And then ask them politely to please clean up their dog's poop. Right? But we know that Satan wants to distract us and will do anything that he can to make sure that we are not in a good place with God. We're going to be looking at a story here that you are familiar with and getting some nuggets that we can apply to patience in prayer. Genesis chapter 37 is where we're going to be. And here we go, Genesis 37, verse 1. So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. See, Joseph was a snitch in the family. Are there any self-admitted snitches in the family growing up? You were always the one who would go and tell on mom or tell on your siblings? Yeah? Chella's like, I don't want to say anything, but yeah, as you, Chella. Okay, that's okay, right? But the problem is snitches is, do people like snitches? No, they don't. Right? And maybe Joseph was doing what he was supposed to do, right? As parents, if your children are up to foolishness, you hope one of them has enough sense to tell you, right? That was Joseph. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. They should have maybe listened to our Sabbath school teaching on unity, right? One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him even more. So he's already hated because he's a special kid. He's already hated because he's a son of his father of his old age. And then so his father does what no parent should do, which is favor one child over another and gives him this special coat, which makes him to be even more hated. Listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before me. His brothers responded, so you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Now, let's just, kind of be honest about our situations. If you had a sibling like that, would you be annoyed at them? The answer is yes, unless you're like just super connected to Jesus, right? Growing up, it's just always annoying. Any of you were kind of annoyed in school because there was always this kid who always got perfect grades? Yeah? Y'all are too holy on me. Okay, that's okay. When people start talking about these grand dreams about where they're going and what's going to happen to them, it's easy to just start to be a little negative towards them. And I don't believe it was Joseph's fault. He didn't ask for these dreams. He didn't ask to be favored and be given these special things. It wasn't his request, but nonetheless, they were given to him. And even though Joseph may have mismanaged how he communicated with his brothers, the reality is Joseph wasn't afraid to wear his Gucci coat, right? If it was in today's day, it wouldn't be super colored. My wife, she bought some glasses and she got them on Zinni, and they're multicolored glasses. And she was super excited about it. She's like, yeah, these are going to look cool. Then she started getting some really interesting comments at work about her multicolored glasses, and realized that in today's age, multicolored glasses mean something else than just multicolored glasses, right? And so today, Joseph probably wouldn't be wearing that kind of robe, because that wouldn't necessarily be what his father wanted to share with him. But the fact is, he wore his coat proudly. He was proud of this gift that he had been given. And as he, realized at a young age that he was different than his siblings, that God maybe had a plan for him that maybe his siblings didn't necessarily share in it. And for whatever reason, the moment he started sharing this dream, his siblings started to hate him. And as I think of today and of individuals who maybe have some dreams and some goals and some things that maybe God has put on their hearts, or maybe some things that they want to accomplish, maybe they just want more for themselves. And when you start sharing with other people, hey man, I've got this goal, man, I want to retire when I'm 35. Or hey man, I've got this goal, man, I want to be able to own a mountain property. Or hey man, you know what, we want to do some impact with this ministry. We believe that God's going to do X, Y, and Z. And do people always applaud your dreams and goals? I need to speak back to me because you're looking like death warmed over a little bit, right? Do people always applaud your goals and your dreams and your ambition? No. They start talking about you and they say, who do you think you are? And sometimes it hurts our feelings, because we want them to be along in that journey. We want them to share with us what God is doing in our lives. But sometimes they don't share the same optimism and the same faith that we have. And something that Joseph realized that we ought to realize is, don't expect everyone to understand your dream if they haven't been given your vision. Don't always expect that someone's going to be happy for you. Because one thing that you'll learn is that some of the reasons why they may not be excited about what's going on is, although you came from the same place, they're still in the same place. Because you know that wherever God allowed you to be, in whatever circumstances that He brought you in, He wants us to grow. The Christian life is about growth. And the moment that we start limiting where God can work in our lives, we're telling God, my growth, I've chosen to stunt my growth because I won't let you in. So what happens is, maybe you're in a successful relationship and you're talking to some of your friends and you say, oh man, I love my husband or my wife, and they're just like, yeah, well, you know what, men are terrible, they're dirt bags, or women, they're just gold diggers. It's just like, whoa, what's your problem? Well, guess what? Maybe they haven't allowed Jesus to really speak into their life about how to be a good spouse. So they're bitter because you're somewhere else, and they could be there too, but they haven't allowed Jesus into their lives. So they're stuck. And I'm sure all of us have some areas in our lives where we have not allowed God to come in and change like He wants to, and mold and shape for His glory. And so when we hear people saying, and we see people getting success in different avenues, whether it's in their careers or their marriages or it's wealth or whatever, sometimes we get bitter because they have allowed themselves to grow under trials and pressures, and we haven't. So we're stuck in the same place. And so when we hear about what God is doing in their life, we get jealous. Maybe that's resonating with somebody. I think I've shared this story before, but I remember going and working at Target. And it was an interesting story. My parents always raised us to achieve. They say, Daniel, listen, you've got a head on your shoulders. You can study, you're able, you're going to go places. Just work hard. And he'd always say something that was really interesting. He's like, Daniel, sometimes people will hate you for no other reason than you're going places. And I was like, what are you talking about, Dad? He says, I'm telling you, son, you've got to be careful sometimes because there are people who will become jealous of the success that you have. Be prepared for that to happen. And so I remember, I was transitioning. I finished my undergrad degree, and I was going off to seminary, but the timing wasn't right in terms of when I graduated versus when enrollment started. So I needed to spend about 9 months in Minnesota with my parents. And so they said, hey, listen, why don't you get a job, be of practical use? And I said, okay, fair enough. So I go get this job at Target. And, I started out as just a cashier, right? Just knowing that this is going to be for 9 months. I'm moving on. I'm not trying to stay or grow in this company. I'm moving on to seminary. Well, a few months pass by, and they say, hey, listen, I've got some skills and people skills, etc. They say, hey, why don't you become a cashier? I said, sure, why not? And then I'm a cashier, and I just get bored because, there's not enough traffic moving in. I just don't like being bored. So I say, hey, is there something else I can do? And they say, well, why don't we put you on the sales floor? I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm working on the sales floor and doing my thing. Can I help you find something, whatever? And then some time passes, and then there's an opportunity for promotion. And I'm just thinking like, listen, I'm making this much. If I have the ability to make that much, why wouldn't I just apply for the raise? I apply for the team lead position, and I get the position. And I'll never forget, I'm at Huddle. Every single morning and evening, we would get together and just talk about how sales were the last day, the things that we were supposed to focus on. And, they share, hey, listen, Dan, applied for the team lead position, and he got it. And in my mind, and it wasn't probably to this extreme, but in my mind, I'm expecting, like, as I get the email, like, oh my goodness, guys, I got the job. And I'm expecting my teammates to be like, oh man, good job. Like, yes, high five. And then I'll watch the guy who's going to be like, yeah, good job, Dan. Like, I'm expecting people to at least be, hey, we're proud of you. But instead, I get the green monster, right? Just jealousy. And I remember one of my coworkers, right, who was a team lead, I was a team member. Now I become a team like them. From that day forward, we've been cool, just chummy. Hey, what's going on? Good. How are you? Yeah, awesome. Da, da, da. The day I got that raise, they never talked to me the same way. All of a sudden, they were short with me. Like, hey, you want to go on lunch together? Like, no, I'm busy. I'm like, oh. Hey, listen, want to do this? They're like, oh no, I've got other plans. I was like, oh, that's funny. They didn't seem to have other plans the other times. What changed? It's because they felt threatened that I was moving on and they weren't. Now, later on, I realized because I got an undergraduate degree, it now made available the opportunity for me to become an executive team leader. That basically you'd be a manager and you'd be on salary, right? And so I quickly realized, like, they feel threatened because they think I want to become an executive team leader. Because here's the thing, they're not bad people. In their minds, for you to be an executive team leader, you had arrived. And the moment they saw that I had the skill set, and then now I was climbing the ranks, they saw and they felt threatened because I was potentially going to become more successful than they are. But here's the thing, little did they know that my mind was not focused on being an executive team leader. I was going on to different things. And I wasn't any better than them, but here's what I realized. Some of them, when I asked them, hey, listen, what's going on? And hey, listen, you've been here for a couple of years. How do you like it? Like, oh, I'm stuck. I don't really like this job. I was like, okay, well, hey, listen, man, why don't you just maybe pick up a couple of classes here and there, and maybe you can just become an ETL. Oh, man, school's so expensive, and it's hard, and I can't do it. And all they're speaking is doubt, the reasons why they can't move forward, reasons why things won't work out for them. And I realize in life there are two kinds of people. There are people who believe that growth is possible, and there are people that are kind of stuck, and they kind of feel like, these are the cards I've been dealt. It's always going to be this way. And maybe you work with people like that, right, who are just stuck on problems and negative things, etc. And maybe you are just like, well, if you have such an issue with it, why don't you change? I said, no, I can't change. Things have always been this way. So Joseph realized, and you will quickly realize, as you allow God to show you what's possible, because we were created in his image, and things that God has made, he doesn't make junk, he doesn't make dirt. Everything that he makes and creates is beautiful. But he says, improve on the gifts that I've given you, and you will have more. And I've talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? We have different mindsets that are blocking us from moving on in life. Some of us have broke mindsets. You somehow think that being poor is somehow synonymous with like being Christian, like God is glorified in your poverty. That's a poor mindset. It's a limited mindset. And I'm not saying you have to be wealthy or you have to be rich, etc. But maybe you need to open up the fact that you can be good and be wealthy. Because it's really ironic when the church needs money for large things, etc. They don't go to the poor people because they know they can't pay or they can't give. They go to the wealthy people. So why do we somehow think that it's wrong to be wealthy? That's a broke mindset. Some of us have broke mindsets around relationships. Oh man, relationships will never work. Those are terrible. No. I can't trust. Like really, you can't trust? You're going to be lonely. Right? Maybe if we allow Jesus to heal us of whatever issues that we had, we can be in healthy relationships. Some of us have broke mindsets around people, around attitudes, around leadership. Oh, isn't it so easy to criticize leaders? How many of you, when you see CNN, you see what our president has said, have something to say about it? Oh man, too holy. Thank you. I got one person, right? The rest of y'all just kind of do it afterwards, right? But the reality, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, it's so easy to criticize people in leadership. But here's the challenge. You get in leadership and see how easy it is. It doesn't mean leaders shouldn't be held accountable, right? But if you always see problems and never you see solutions, your life is going to be challenged. And God is encouraging us, right? And he's going to teach Joseph the hard way. Hey, Joseph, when you've got dreams and when you've got visions, be careful who you share them with. Because the people that can't see beyond their present circumstances won't be happy that you can. So when you start trying, even if you fail, right? What happens to people who are successful? They try and they fail. And then what do the rest of the people? See, I told you that business would never work, huh? You see, you should have stayed here. Okay. But here's what happens. They try and fail, and they try and fail, and they try and fail, and then after failing so many times, they finally succeed. And then when they're wealthy beyond measure, they're like, man, why does he get all the money? We should get more money from the government. And we think that it's the government's job to fund our lives. Just sharing. So Joseph realizes and realizes through life that, hey, listen, there are people who I can trust. Here's the thing. People that I love, who I think I should trust, that I very quickly find out that I can't. Because sometimes it's especially the people that you know the most, the closest, that are the most critical of your life. They end up wanting to kill him, and one of the brothers has enough sense to say, no, don't kill him. Let's put him in this hole, thinking that later on he's going to come and get him out. But they see some travelers coming through, and they end up selling their brother because they felt threatened by their hate, and they felt threatened by his dreams. And they figure, let's get rid of him. So Joseph ends up being in Egypt. And when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was the captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything that he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Don't miss that. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything that he did. Now, watch what happens. When people start to see God's blessing on your life, they will want to associate themselves with you because they want the blessings that God has. And they may not necessarily even want God's blessings, but they want the success in you. And so if you allow yourself to be in that relationship with God, he will show you things. He will give you the right kinds of attitudes. He will put the right disciplines in you so that the world will start to recognize you and they want you on their team. And Potiphar realized that. He's just a slave, but there's something about that slave. So he said, I'll buy the slave. And he sees that as he gives Joseph responsibilities, he fulfills them. As he allows Joseph greater access, Joseph doesn't abuse it. He honors that and he trusts that. And so his master says, man, I like this guy. I like this boy. I'm going to give him more and more responsibilities. This pleased Potiphar. And soon, he made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. From that day, Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property. The Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and his livestock flourished. Now, don't miss this about Joseph. Joseph might have felt, privileged, and Joseph might have felt like he was a special kid and, had everything on a silver spoon kind of a thing. But then the Lord, in his wisdom and his knowledge, said, hey, listen, Joseph, I've got plans for you. And guess what? Part of the plans that I have for you involves struggle. And we don't like to hear that. Because when we hear that God loves us and he cares about us and he's got Jeremiah 29:11, he's got good plans for us. And then the moment we face a trial, we're like, hey, what up, God? I thought you loved me. And God's like, yeah, and that's why I'm giving you this trial. No. I don't like trials. Yes, but you need them. You need them. You may not like them, but you need them. And so Joseph, the dreams that God blessed Joseph with, when they started to look into reality, they looked like hard work. And this is where Joseph and some of his brothers and maybe some of us need to maybe fix some of our thinking. We want success in life. And you can define whatever that success looks like. Relationship with God, whether it's, a certain income level, whether it's family, time with them, maybe whatever success looks like for you. We want success in life. And God says, listen, I'm going to help you become successful. Now, I might shift your idea with what true success is, but he says, hey, listen, you have goals? Let's go. But when you start to achieve those goals, they almost always look like work. And we said, no. I want to be successful. Well, start in the mailroom. Mailroom? I'm too good for the mailroom. I should start at the executive level. Doesn't work that way. Success is uphill every single step of the way. And people that choose to not work hard, they inevitably choose to settle in life. And sometimes get bitter when they see other people succeeding. When the same opportunity was theirs, but it looked like hard work. And they didn't like the hard work, so they shunned the hard work, also shunning the success that came with it. But for Joseph, whatever good things that he enjoyed, they got worked out, and he started to realize what the cost of success would be. It was service. And I guarantee you, if you would have asked Joseph starting out, hey, Joseph, God said, people are going to bow down to your brothers. Man, did you ever think that was going to look like scrubbing toilets? He would have been like, no, that's not what I had in mind. And in the same way, when God looks at the life path that he has laid out for us, and he looks at the end, which is glory, he wants us to be there with him, and he says, listen, I want you to be with me, but I need to know that I can trust you, because I want to elevate you to a position of service. Okay, God, I'm ready to be president. Okay, good. Start by being the mail boy. Oh, man. Because if you want to be ready to serve at high levels, you have to start at low levels. And you have to be trusted, which means you get responsibility. So as Joseph is faithful in his responsibilities, they grow. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man. Don't miss this, friends. The path to greatness is through service. If you want to be more than what you are, learn how to serve more. While Joseph was waiting on God, he was serving God's people. Because realize, imagine being on that caravan for miles and miles and miles, knowing that every single thing that you knew and loved and cared about was quickly fading away, and you might never see them again. Don't just focus on the future success that Joseph had, etc., but you've got to realize the path to greatness is through service and through heartache and through pain. Through, not around, through. Not over, through. And some of us are crying out to God because they're saying, God, I can't handle this, and God, it's not fair, and etc., not realizing that God is saying, I'm saving you through these trials. Be faithful through the trials. Joseph, I'm sure, had moments of saying, man, what did I ever do to deserve this? I was obedient. I did the right thing. Why me? And some of you are asking in the situations that you're in right now, God, why is my marriage like this? I never asked for this. God, I didn't do anything wrong. Why are my finances, why is my health so poor? God, I never intended for this to happen. Why am I in this situation? And here's the thing. It's easier to be in those situations when it's a result of your own stupidity, right? I mean, how many people have bought something that they probably shouldn't have bought and then got the credit card bill and then be like, how are we going to pay this? Oh no, Lord, why? It's like, why? You're asking me why you made a dumb choice? But we get that because part of it is like, I deserve to pay 18% interest on financing my burger. I deserve that. Yep, because I made the choice. But it's a whole nother story when it was not anything you did wrong. Those are sometimes the most difficult trials to go through because it's so easy to get bitter. God, I never was going to give up on my marriage. They gave up on the marriage. God, it wasn't my poor decision that put our business under. It was my partner's decision. God, it's not a result of my eating habits that I'm in this mess. That's not my fault, God. And we get sometimes angry at God. And I want you to know today, if you're in that place, it's okay to be angry as long as you go to God with your anger. Because anywhere else you take your anger, it's not going to help solve the problem. You'll just get more angry. This is the example that Jesus gave for us. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. So while you're waiting on whatever prayer that you're praying for, deliverance for this, financial things for that, your children who are acting a fool, etc., while you're waiting, serve. Because it's so easy to say, God, what am I supposed to do? Wait on the Lord, he'll renew your strength. I'm waiting. What am I? Serve. Where should I serve? Anywhere you can. Because the act of service tells God, I'm available to you. And you may want something very specific and pray for that thing very specifically, and that's good. But while you're waiting, serve. So Joseph, up to this point, right? Maybe he was a spoiled brat. Well, maybe let's just say that. He was a little spoiled brat. It's like, hey, look, you're going to bow down to me. Look at my Gucci coat, etc. Okay, you know what? People don't like you when you brag. So get in the pit. Okay. So then he goes and he's at Potiphar's place and he's serving and he's being faithful. And now, as his faith, as his work ethic, he's not complaining. He's not cutting corners. Some people, there's people talk about different kind of mindsets. There's an employee mindset, and maybe you've had this mindset. When I was at Target, and some days this was me, not most days, but some days, right? And as bagging groceries, and you see this mother. It seems like she's feeding 12 people. She has 2 full carts, and the moment she rolls up, you're like, I need a break. It's time for break, right? You ever met people like that? The moment a real hard job comes, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm getting sick. I won't be at work tomorrow, right? People that broke me down. Joseph wasn't doing that. When the job needed to be done, he did it. He didn't say, Potiphar, I've got a team now, so maybe I'll give one. No. He was the first to do the hardest job. That's what leadership looks like. You lead by example. And as he led by example, his responsibilities grew. And now Joseph can be like, oh man, I'm starting to see the light of day. I'm being faithful. Maybe it's not my fault that I was here, but I've gotten over that season of life of complaining and being bitter. Now I'm serving, and I'm getting somewhere. And now Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. Come sleep with me, she demanded. Good-looking young man has got everybody's attention, including the wife of his boss. But Joseph refused. He said, look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. And man, let me tell you, as you look at his response, right? All the women in the church are saying, amen. Can we find some Christian men whose eyes are on the Lord and they're on who they need to be on, and they're not on who they shouldn't need to be on? Because the truth of the matter is, see, again, we talked about this spiritual struggle. Satan wants to do anything he can to destroy us because we are associated with God. So he'll use anything. But guess what? He hasn't had to use a whole lot of different kinds of things because guess what? He realized if the same thing works, why change it? He has used the sin of sexual sin, and it's destroying society. In the church, it's tearing us up. Transparent Ministry says this. Statistics on sexual sin, specifically pornography. Sex is the number one thing that people search for on the internet. The number one thing they search for. The industry is larger than the top revenues of the top technology companies combined. More than Microsoft, Google, Amazon, eBay, Yahoo, Apple, Netflix. 7 out of 10 lay leaders in the church admit visiting adult websites once a week. 5 out of 10 pastors said they did. I'm not condemning. I was one of those 5. 60% of all Christian men and 30% of all Christian women are addicted to it. Chuck Swindoll says it's the number one secret problem in your church. Oprah calls it America's number one addiction. The fact that Joseph could say this and have integrity speaks milestones about his character. Because the truth of the matter is, this is not easy to talk about. And we would rather sweep it under the rug and not deal with it. And Satan loves it when we don't address issues because they can silently destroy us. He wants to tear up marriage. Absolutely. That's the foundation of what God created. And when we don't address these things and talk about them, then he thrives and he wins. You know, last week, the Sabbath school discussion was talking about intimacy, and my wife was like, oh my goodness, people are going to have some issues at church with this week's lesson. But why is that the case? Are we so naive to think that our kids aren't learning about this stuff? Yes, it's uncomfortable, but your kids probably already know about it. Where would you rather have them learn about sexuality? In the church, with you, or out there from their friends? Because the number one users are 12 to 17-year-olds. So Joseph has integrity. And Joseph says, no. And Paul's okay. If you're struggling with this thing, you need to know that you're not a bad person. That you're not evil. God doesn't want you to say the same, but he recognizes that you have some issues. The problem is when we don't take our issues to God, then he can't fix them. We hide them and we sweep them under the rug. And then we get surprised when we hear about these scandals of all these ministers. Why is that a surprise? The statistics are right in front of us, but we choose to ignore them because it's more comfortable to just, well, let's just pray about it. Are you serious? That's not enough, guys. We have to talk about this. We have to admit that it's a problem, and we have to start talking about solutions. We need to start saying, find a Christian 12-step program. Read the big books of Alcoholics Anonymous. Read it. Start understanding this thing and realizing how addiction works. It's not something that you can just pray about and goes away. I tried it for decades. Beating myself up. Why? I'm trying, and I want to be better, and I want to be this, and I want to be faithful, but I'm not. And nobody's talking about it. I talked to my dad. He says, son, just don't do it. Are you serious? Is that your solution? Just don't do it? And so, and this might not be your thing, but you have a thing. Trust me. We all have a drug that we go to that helps us escape the realities of what we don't want to feel. And God is saying, whatever that drug is, I want to go through it with you. But you won't let me. So then you struggle. And then you settle. And then we ask questions like, why isn't the church growing? Because the church isn't being real. We're just talking about fluffy stuff. God wants us to be everything he created us to be. Which means he has to take all the dirt in our lives. And he's patient. But he's saying, man, are there Josephs in this world? Are there people who will just stop settling? Is there somebody who will take a stand? And even if you're struggling, say, listen, I'm struggling, but I don't want to struggle with it. I'm working through this thing, and not because necessarily you don't always need to tell everybody your business, but will you start being safe with somebody? Will you let people know into your lives and let them know what's going on so they can help you? And will we stop condemning each other when we hear about stuff going on? See, when you come to church and you know you got issues going on, and church people know you got issues going on, and you know that they're talking about your issues, but you're not talking to them, why would they want to still keep coming? Or why would they want to keep telling you what's going on? Because then church just becomes the gossip 101. And he's saying, I want more for my church. I've got a message to give this to the world, and it's going to be done through my church. But my church has to be real enough to say that we struggle too. We keep the Sabbath, and we have issues. And let him work through those things. So she kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. Before you can be trusted, you will be tested. And I believe this is the number one test our church is failing. It's devastating us. And every day, more men die inside because we don't want to speak up against it. Potiphar ends up hearing what happens. He's furious. Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph treated her, right? She manipulates and lies, and one day he's going out there and he's cleaning, etc., and she literally just like rips his clothes off, and Joseph flees from temptation, but then his wife lies and says, look, he's coming to make a sport of us. Potiphar finds out, he's angry, but obviously I think he knew what was really going on. Why? Because guess what? So he took Joseph and threw him into prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. There were other prisons where not the king's prisoners were held, but Joseph gets taken to the king's prisoners. You think Potiphar knew the inclinations of his wife? I guarantee you, once you start being successful in life, you need to be careful, because with success comes prestige, comes honor, comes visibility, and come temptations. So all of you who want to be successful, don't be so quick to want success, because if you can't handle success, it'll destroy you. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Notice that when the Lord is with you, there are blessings there. When the Lord is with you, there is hope there. When the Lord is with you, there's a future there. When the Lord is with you, you have a chance. But if the Lord is not with you, I shudder to feel what would happen. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. Same thing. Because here's what happens. When you go through trials, it starts to shape and form your character, so that it doesn't matter what trial you go through, the same character that's formed there only gets strengthened. So the more you beat him down, the stronger he becomes. The more you talk about him, the more valiant and determined he becomes that God will win the victory in the end. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. Now notice, all through this time, Joseph is still waiting. He's still waiting for retribution. He's still waiting for vindication. He's still waiting for God to right the things that were done that were wrong. But guess what he's not doing? He's not just sitting there and waiting. He's not just complaining. He's saying, listen, don't get bitter, get better. Your life is a mess? Okay, fine. Find someone who has a worse life than you and serve them. Because all too often, especially in the West, the issues that we truly think are issues are not really that big of a problem. And I don't know what you're going through, and I'm not saying what you're going through isn't big. I'm saying in the bigger perspective of life, I'm sure there are people that are going through worse things than you are. I guarantee they are. And God is saying, I want to serve you. How He's going to serve us? By allowing us to serve other people, because that's what Jesus did. We've heard the saying, good things come to those who wait. Right? So the question is, what are you waiting for? And how long have you been waiting for that thing? It may be a good thing. It may even be a God thing. How long have you been waiting for? And sometimes the challenge is as we preach and we listen to these verses and we get these scriptures that we appreciate and we like, we hear things like, even strong lions sometimes go hungry, but those who trust in the Lord will not lack no good things. We hear, since He did not spare us all, even His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, won't He also give everything else, right? The other day, a couple of weeks ago, this bird decided that it wanted to build a nest. And the place that it chose to build its nest was right outside our back door. So you open our back door and there's a light up there that's covered by the roof. And so the bird decided to build this nest. And so I was surprised because every single time we opened the door, something would fly away. And so I looked up there and said, interesting, what is that? And here's what I found. These little baby birds with their beaks wide open. They were the most pitiful thing in the world. And I said it in a loving manner because all they could do was wait on mommy to bring food. They were completely and utterly helpless. And sometimes I think this is us as Christians. And we glorify this idea of just waiting. Just like, I'm waiting, Lord. Good things come to those who wait. But guess what? The best things come to those who do. And what do? They serve. They wait on the Lord, yes, but while you're waiting, serve. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. Because as you serve, you show God that I'm not above anything you ask me to do. Then God can trust you because he's building your character. And when it's all said and done, the world will wonder at what he's done through you. Now all glory to him who is able through his mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think. God elevated Joseph not for selfishness, but for service. We know the story. He ends up being second in control of the whole nation, the most powerful nation in the entire world. He becomes number 2. And here's why God can't promote people with broke mindsets to these large leadership levels. And some of them are there, and that's just a disaster in its own world, right? But God knows, man, if you are selfish with little, and if I give you much, you'll just be selfish with much. But God knows if you can be faithful in little, then with much you can be even more faithful. And so Joseph, I believe, only because he went through the trials that he went through, and every single one of those trials, and God shaped and formed him, then he could trust him to finally put him as number 2. Because when his brothers came, what was his brothers' reaction? Oh my goodness, Joseph, you are going to want to kill us and destroy us. But Joseph said, no. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. He knew that I would be the one to help serve you. Because how many of you, if that's how you had been treated, how many of you would have served Joseph, or would have maybe put him in jail, would have killed them all? How many of you maybe would have gone back and found all those people that badmouthed you and talked about you and stomped them out? Because be careful. Power simply shows and illuminates the character of who you are. All money does is expose your true character. If you're selfish with little, you'll be selfish with much. So you might be wondering, man, what is God doing while I'm waiting? Philippians 4:6-8 says this: don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and your minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about these things that are excellent and worthy of praise. You have issues in your life? You're waiting for God to answer a prayer? Yes. Stop asking when. Just ask for peace. There's an artist that said, listen, I want answers, but you know what? I'll settle for peace of mind. And God says, yeah, I'll give you peace. The peace doesn't tell you when. The peace says, I'm big enough to handle it. Trust me. Well, what am I supposed to do while I'm waiting? Serve. Serve people. I want to make a very specific appeal. We have some people in our church family who are looking for rides to church. And friends, I don't do a good enough job of maybe communicating what the different needs are in our church family. But it bothers me to think that a couple of people would love to be a part of us every single week, but because they don't have the transportation, sometimes they're not able to be here. And we made this appeal before, but we didn't really get much response. So I want to make it again. I want to make it clear. I want to make it every single week because I know we can fill this need. There are about 70 families that drive here every single week. I know we can find at least 5 of them to commit to taking on the responsibility and the privilege of serving. So in the back, before you leave, think and ask God. Don't ask him whether you can do this, because if you got here, you can do it, right? But see if you are willing to give your life to serve in this small way. And many of you are serving in many other ways. And this is not a guilt thing, but it's just a real thing, which is we can't claim to be the church of God, the church that wants to bring people and proclaim the message and spend tens of thousands of dollars on evangelism if we can't even commit to giving somebody a ride to church. And most likely the issue is you just maybe don't know about it, but I'm telling you now, and you know about it. So would you be willing to serve? I'm not asking for 1 week. I'm not asking for 2 weeks. I'm saying, will you be willing to say, if I'm going to church, they're going with me? I'm saying every Thursday, commit, say, listen, sister, I can't wait to pick you up on, not, oh, you need a ride this week? Get out of here with that. That's not what Jesus did. Say, sister, I would love to be there. Matter of fact, I'd love to pick you up. I'd love to worship with you. I'd love to take you home with me to eat, and then I'll take you back to your place. Can we do that? Don't say yes. Sign up. Because it just gets at me. I'm not angry at you. It just gets at me that, God, what are we waiting for? Why can't we do why aren't the promises that were in the Bible being fulfilled in 2000? Why are people sending missionaries to America? We used to be sending them out. And he says, Daniel, you got to serve. I'm like, I'm already serving. Not enough, because I gave it all. And here's the thing, if you're not at a place where you're willing to give it all, that's okay. It just means you're not there yet with Jesus. Just continue along the journey that you're with him on. Because at some point, God will start pricking your heart for his people. We need you and your car to minister on Saturday morning in the back in the AV booth. If you are willing to do this, sign up. We will call you. Take responsibility. I already have responsibilities. Take more. Because Jesus didn't ask, man, how much do they want? He gave everything. And he's waiting for me, for my character. Because guess what? Do you know who can give the easiest excuse about not wanting to give more? It's me. Because it's my job. God, I gave my 50 hours. What else do you want from me? He says, I want you to give more, Daniel, because I gave more. So that's my appeal. If you're willing to give somebody a ride, to commit to saying, I will take them to church, and if I can't go to church, I will find somebody. Not, I will say, Pastor, I can't take them. No. Take the responsibility. Find somebody else to bring them to church. Serve as Jesus served us. You want answers to your prayers? So do I. But guess what? So does Jesus. His prayer, that they may be one, so the world will know that you sent me. Let's pray. Father, you have plans for us. You have plans for me. But Lord, my ego is getting in your way. Thank you for being patient with me. Our egos get in the way of what you want to do through us. So for those who are under the weight of a serious trial, wondering if they have the strength, give them peace. For those in a place of complacency who have said, maybe I'll never be able to get over this addiction, give them hope. Father, for those who are overcoming and are joyously moving ahead, encourage them, Father, to share their stories of experience, strength, and hope, so that we all together would be in the kingdom. This is only available through the Holy Spirit. And we praise you because you will give us this gift, because we ask in faith. Amen.
Thank you so much for worshiping with us today. It meant a lot to us. We know that God's got a blessing for you as you apply what he's taught you throughout the week. Have an amazing week, and don't forget to tune in next Sabbath. Have a good one.